So today is the first day that it feels like spring, which is wonderful. I'm wearing my purple scarf, my orchid coloured scarf, because today we are going to be painting orchids in a fun, fast way. So we are going to start with just the lightest possible pencil drawing for placement. Doesn't have to be too accurate, just to give us an idea of where our colour is going to go. So I'm going to put in my leaves. Since we're going to be drawing the orchid plant in ink over our watercolor, it doesn't have to be too accurate. It can be nice and loose. I'm going to add the stem last. So next, I'm going to put in a little bit of purple pink for the flowers. So now I'm going to put in the purple, just that very center of the orchid. And I want to be sure that my orchids are sort of facing in different directions. So I angle this and I angle the lip in slightly different ways. So now you're going to add a little bit of clean water to this lovely purple and just pull it out, just to basically roughly suggest the shape of the tepals. While it's still wet, just on the point of your brush, you'll get some of your yellow 34 and you'll just dot it into the very center. I'm going to go back and add a little bit of darker green, 53 and 67, just to the center for added interest. For the stem, I'm going to mix my green 53 and my alizarin crimson 36, and I want my stem to have a nice swoop, so I'm going to hold my brush basically almost vertical and just lightly stroke it round the paper. And you don't even have to complete the hoop, because you can just fake it with some stems. And we'll go round and then we'll put some buds on. So we'll just add some buds at the tip of the stem, and we're going to make these darker just for emphasis. So here I've put my sideways flower in, or my sort of seen from the back flower, and now unfortunately that horrible word, wait while we let it dry. So annoyingly, it's still not completely dry, but this leaf is already dry enough for me to start. So I'm going to start working on here. I'm going to be careful not to put my hand into the wet paint. Fingers crossed. And I'm going to use the same 005 pen that I used last week, because I really like the fine line. So now we're going to begin to just draw in our leaf. And I think the magic of this technique is having the very loose drawing beneath and the nice line drawing on top. And you don't have to hug the original watercolor too closely. So you're just going to start to draw in the leaves. And then we'll draw in the side, because this is where things get interesting underneath. So I think it's nice to just take your time and add as much line work as you like. So you're going to see how beautifully the line just sort of describes the flow and the shape of the leaf. So be sure it has a beautiful curve, and you can vary it. They don't all have to go to the very end. Once you think the buds are dry, you can start defining the buds and the stem. So a little line for the stem. And again, I like to go slightly off register for my buds and for my line work. And you're just going to go around the drawing, making sure that each area is dry before you start going over with the ink or before you accidentally put your hand in it, as I'm prone to do. And it's nice to have some as if they're seen from the back and some where you see the front of the flower. But what I love about this particular method is that you don't have to be too precise, because we will understand what an orchid looks like and our eyes will fill in any gaps. Our flower has some little red dots in at the center, in the very center here. So if you like, you can put them in. It's totally optional. They're not nearly as pink as the rest of the orchid, so I mixed some orange 31 in with my red. And I'm just going to put just a couple in just for the sake of contrast, but not too many and not in all of them. So this is a lovely, very fast way of depicting your orchid. We're going to add a few more details and then we will be done. I'm going to add just a couple of the veins that we see on the lateral tepals. But I don't want to add too many at all, and I'm not going to add them on all the flowers. And you want to be sure that they curve so that the flower seems to move in space and it's not too flat. All of these lines are going to have to logically originate from the center of the flower too. I'm going to go back to my slightly thicker pen now that this leaf seems to have finally dried, and add some more lines. We have a large empty space here, and there are a number of things that we could do with it. We could put another leaf going in the back if we wanted. We could add a few more flowers if we wanted. We could add a bug or a bird. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a label on, because I think our label is always fun to do. So I'm going to just draw on it very lightly to start with. And then I'm going to imagine it's actually tied onto the stalk. You may not see this on the video, but once I ink it in, I promise you'll see it. So I'm going to be lazy and just call it a small orchid. And you'll notice that when I ink it in, that I've drawn it with a nice curve that kind of mimics the roundness of the stem and the shapes of the leaves. So it's going to go up, just like a little ribbon. It's going to go down. It's going behind the stem. And then we'll draw it as if it's sort of tied onto the stem. And I draw a guideline for my words too. So actually the very hardest thing of all is the weighting. I test this because I really don't want to erase it and smear any wet paint, but I want to get rid of any of my pencil lines that might still be showing. And last but not least, I like to add a tiny bit of splatter So I get a very small amount of dilute green on my brush, and I just lightly tap just at the base around the leaves, and maybe a tiny amount of pale pink up at the top. But again, less is more, so if you're worried about this, don't do it, but I think it just adds to that look of freshness. So I hope you all enjoy this. I hope you all experiment with the watercolor and the fine line marker, and I can't wait to see what you do.